Good day to all who are watching and listening. It is the Empowered Educator here, ready to share with you another powerful message with you that was on my heart. And first, I would like to give a special shout out to some of my newest subscribers, as well as those who have been enthralled in the channel. First, I want to give a special shout out to Miss Swanson, coming all the way from Powder Springs, Georgia. She has won our first gift giveaway, and I just want to share how excited I am to connect with you. As we speak, we are preparing your kids for shipping as a holiday gift for your diverse learners. So I'm excited for that opportunity and to engage with you. And if you are someone who is interested in more information about student self-care kits, I highly recommend you all check out my link below in the description box of this video. I also want to give a brief shout out to my new subscribers. Thank you all so much for being a contributor to the platform. Hit the bell to get instant notifications about new videos, shorts, or postings. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and also post any comments below that might resonate with you in this video, okay? So today's video was also highly requested by two of my colleagues, and I want to take a brief moment to shout out Jeremy and Julia for the idea and give them a special thanks for pouring into the channel, all right? But before we get into the topic of this video, I do want to give you all an overview of the mission, vision, and values of Empowered Educator, all right? So the mission is to empower priority school educators, children, and families through culturally responsive instructional practices that promote marginalized student academic achievement and positive behavior outcomes. The vision is to empower and educate the whole child, as well as their caregivers and teachers through culturally responsive instructional practice and routines. So we are not only educating our children through academics, we are helping our children heal mentally as well as spiritually and physically so that they can continue to do the work that God has called them on this planet to do. And our values are to teach a mind, to touch a heart, and to change a life. And we know that through our values here that we are indeed making a difference in the lives that we wish to see out in this world, okay? So this video is called 6 Ways to Diversify Your Shared Reading Experience. And before I delve into that topic, I do want to identify the differences and similarities between a shared reading experience and a read aloud experience, because both they do have some similarities about them, but there are some unique differences within those components as well, okay? So first and foremost, my perspective of a shared reading experience is it is a collective reading experience that allows the learner and the facilitator to engage in the selection. A shared reading experience usually involves a bigger text selection that is easy for students to follow along with, all right? Teachers use a pointer or their finger to locate words in the text. And it's a simple tool that also invites children to engage in this learning experience. Now, this protocol usually takes place in the carpet area of your classroom. This is not a practice that you would do in isolation. And what I mean by that is a teacher reading a book to the class where the class or the students are seated at their tables. I actually have another video that I did recently where it talks about the power zone in the K through 5 learning space. The power zone is in that carpeted area of your classroom. And if you are an instructor that does not have that in your elementary class, I highly recommend you go back and redo your whole floor plan, because that is the most powerful space where learning can happen inside of your classroom. All right. So the shared reading experience, it is a collective experience. It's not something that kids sit at their tables and do with the teacher. In my video, I talk about how the carpet area eliminates opportunity for distractions. All right. So this is something you do in that intimate space on the floor with your students. When we think about the definition of a read aloud, a read aloud is a collective reading experience, but this allows the learner to actively listen to the facilitator narrate the selection. All right. So it is merely the teacher reading to the class. And there might be moments where students can engage in the read aloud by asking and answering questions, but this is an old school approach. It is an old school approach to engaging children of diverse needs. And quite frankly, I don't find it diverse at all. I'm not a fan of read alouds. And really, ever since we've had to transition to non-traditional instruction, I just have not been very fond with utilizing this technique or skill or strategy within the K through 5 learning space. I find that read aloud is more for students that have a higher sense of understanding and self-control and critical thinking. When you're teaching students that have come out of a a a moment of learning from online, you would find that if you try to do read aloud, some of your kids probably fell asleep. So I do not find read aloud as effective as a shared reading experience when you have kids that have diverse learning styles. All right. So um, I find read alouds most engaging when students are the ones reading to their class. And I have another video that talks about 3 powerful ways that you can end your school day on a positive note. That video is also linked below in the comments box. Okay, so if you have not checked out that video, I highly recommend, excuse me, I highly recommend that you do that. Okay, read alouds they're played out to me, and I think that a lot of our kids get bored with it, and it creates opportunity for behavior to show. So I'm all on board with share reading. And if you're someone that wants to learn more about how you can execute this practice in your learning space, I highly recommend you watch the rest of this video. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about now is your approach. All right. How do you execute the shared reading experience? So first, I want to talk about what the teacher does before the read. All right. So first and foremost, the teacher hooks the students in the selection. That first part of the shared reading experience is one of the most important parts to delivering what this instructional practice looks like. All right. Um, in this experience, teachers give a brief synopsis of the story that students are about to read, and they also loop that with a personal connection that students can share about this particular text. I am a fan of Space Boy and Galaxy Girl. One of my favorite books about these particular characters are when, Galaxy Girl loses her tooth. Now, that is something that a lot of our children can have all of our children can have a personal experience with. So, of course, kids are going to want to turn and talk or raise their hand and stand up and share ways that, they've lost a tooth, okay? That's how you hook your learners in the classroom, is through those personal connections. All right. Once you have hooked students in that personal connection, allow each student to share. If you have a class that has a high need of diverse learners within that space, allow each person in that space to share their particular moment of losing a tooth, or what have you, whatever content you are relating to or question you are relating to this text. Okay. Let each person share. There's nothing like, calling on your 3 kids and then the other ones having a meltdown because they didn't get to share. This is what invites kids into reading. And you'll notice that globally, well, across the United States, we see a decline in literacy. If you want to get your kids engaged in books, the first thing that you have to do is make that personal to the learners that are reading. How does this story connect to me and my real life experiences? Let each of your students share. I like to tell my students to stand up so that we can track the speaker and tell us about this moment and how it relates to you. You also want to discuss, why you picked this book. What is the purpose? What learning goal are we trying to accomplish through this read aloud? You want to pick one standard or one skill that addresses the needs of your learners. On the slide, it says you want to pick a standard that addresses the skill students are working on. Don't pick something in isolation of the learning goal. Pick something that is meaningful to what the kids are building on in the classroom. If you have kids that are learning about the author and the illustrator, then point out features of the author and the illustrator. All right. While you're reading the story, talk about the words that the author uses. Talk about the illustration that the illustrator uses. And I would only stop a couple of times to address that because you don't want to lose the kids. Once you have lost them, it's hard to bring them back. So pick one particular skill or standard that you are trying to address with your learners, all right? Some lesson plans like Fountains and Pinnell. Fountains and Pinnell is amazing. Fountains and Pinnell gives you all different types of things that you can address while you're reading. But you just want to pick one. I will say that Fountains and Pinnell is not very standards-based. It's more skills-based. But you can also consider, when you're picking your selection, this is a good book to address characters, or this is a good book to address text features, for an example. Okay, but before the reading is the most important part of your lesson. You really want to hook your kids. And this shouldn't be longer than 5 minutes, all right? You want to make sure that you are also pacing through this to keep your learners actively engaged. Once you have introduced this selection, then you're going to jump into the first part of your reading, okay? This is where the teacher has to be explicit. Tell the students that I am going to read this book to you first. Then, while the teacher is reading, point to each word in the book. While you are doing that, this is where you pull the kids in and you address that skill or that standard that students are working on. If you're talking about bold print, point those words out and say, oh, I notice a dark word. What do we call that? And you'll pick on a kid and say it's bold print, okay? Then elaborate. What does the bold print in stories help the reader understand? That's how you bring the kids into the selection, all right? And you're still addressing that standard or skill that students are working on. I would only do that a couple of times. And then when you get to the end of the book, you might have a picture glossary, you might have a word glossary. Just talk about how the author utilized the bold print to help you understand what those words meant when you get to that back of the book, all right? The second read is the part where the kids are invited to read specific parts with the teacher. When I'm talking about those specific parts, you have to be very intentional about what parts you pick students to read with you. You might want students to read repeated patterns in the book, words or expressions. And when I'm talking about expressions, I'm talking about parts of the book that are going to make kids laugh or have some type of emotion with that part of the text. For example, There are lots of variations of the Three Little Pigs and Little Red Riding Hood and all those different types of stories. There are all types of repeated words and phrases and expressions that are utilized in those texts. Ask students to join in and read those specific parts of books, okay? Now, in the second part of this video, I'm going to talk about ways that you can diversify or you can create variations within that second part of the read. And what I'm going to do here in a minute, I'm going to show you a video of what this second read aloud might look like. Okay. This can also be a choral reading that you do with the class, just based on how easy the text is that you pick. Okay. The third read is where the learners and this teacher revisit the text another time. And this can be something that you use to address a different standard or skill that students are working on. In fact, in my last video that I did about 3 powerful ways to end your school day on a positive note, there's actually a student there that is reading. She's reading a text that I had read to the class through a shared reading experience. She picked that book up right away and read it to the class as if it was her first read. She did the third read on her own. I didn't even have to tell her to pick up the book and read. She felt called to do that, and she did an amazing job. If you have not checked out that video, I highly recommend you do it. Shared reading is the first experience that really engages your learners and encourages them to read a book on their own. So it's powerful. It's so much more powerful than just engaging in a read aloud. That's why this generation, we need to be doing more shared reading experiences with our kids, okay? Once you get done reading the book, also ask students to evaluate their experience. Did you all like this book? Well, how did you feel? Let's do a temperature check about how we like this book. Or maybe what are some other ideas of text we can read we can engage in with each other. Okay? But ask students to evaluate their experience. That's going to let you know, wow, the kids really enjoyed books like this, and we need to continue to engage in more experiences like this. All right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be quiet for a moment, and I'm actually going to play a video showing you all the shared reading experience that I had with my class. This is not the entire protocol, but it does show you what that second read looks like, sounds like, and what it feels like. All right. And this is not with a big book. This is actually with a guided reading book, but it was the perfect book that I had picked out for kids to understand connections between informational stories, specifically how-to pieces. All right. So we learned about making pizza, and teachers, those that have been, donating money to the platform, I do want to say that the money that you donate, it does go right back into my classroom with our kids, as well as technology to help me continue to build this platform. And we got to actually go inside of the kids' kitchen this week and make pizza. It was so cute. So I'm going to play this video, and I just want you all to notice how students are engaged. 100% engagement. 100% engagement. So enjoy this selection. So a couple of things I want to point out in this video. First, I want you all to notice that I did stop to ask the kids a question about the text. And I asked them to notice a part in the word cheese. And immediately they saw the CH hunk and chunk. And we utilized the Jenny Dow phonics dance curriculum in the classroom to help our students grasp the phonemic awareness concept in the class. And they said CH, which is what I wanted to point out. So that is a teaching point. And then also me complimenting students saying, good job for getting your mouth ready to make the first sound, because that is also a reading strategy that we practice when we do guided reading. So again, as you can see, all students are engaged. You see there's one lovely lady who is kind of just pointing as I am. And sometimes that also helps kids follow along with the reading. So now I am going to tell you about ways that you can make your shared reading experience diverse. All right. How can you create different variations of this experience? First of all, you want to read a big book or a text level selection. You don't want to pick something that is like, I teach first grade. So of course, I'm not going to pick something that's level Q or level Z that's going to be totally out of context. So you want to pick something that is going to attract your learners and something that has words inside of it that the kids are going to be able to pick up on and read. Number 2, you want to read it 2 times. Invite students to read the repeated patterns, the words, and the expressions the second time, all right? And be very intentional about the directions of how this is going to go. You didn't get to see that part in that video, but I do tell the kids, first, I'm going to read the story to you, and then the next time we're going to read it together. Third, read the selection and omit words. You can also think about this as a closed reading. This also helps kids pay attention to the story that you are reading, because they're going to have to follow along to know what word has been omitted. Fourth, you want to do kind of like a team-based reading. Girls versus boys, colored shirts. You can also do variations of seat cushions. Like as you noticed in my videos, different students had different colors of seat cushions. And there have been stories that practice reader's theater. And some of the reader's theater, they will quote different characters in their sayings through colors. So that's a fun way to also engage in that second reading with your class. Number 5, provide students with copies to follow along with. The Fountas and Pinnell shared reading curriculum is amazing because it provides a set. It's not a class set, but it is a set of books that you all utilize in that shared reading experience. You might have some kids that really need that hands-on experience, and you might have some kids that can just follow along with the big book that is projected in the front of the class. But regardless, you want to make sure you have those copies. I also keep these copies in my guided reading center. So when students finish doing their 3 reads with their guided reading book, they are able to pick out another book out of that collection on my desk that they can practice on their own. That's also extending that third opportunity for students to revisit that text and notice other skills that they are working on. And then number 6, invite a student to lead the experience. This is another fun way to, engage your learners. Kids love learning from each other. And I'm kind of clapping when I say that. They love learning from each other. Okay. It's great when the teacher, can create this animation with the class, but when the kids get up there and they see a peer of theirs, it just has a bigger effect. It lets them know that they can do this too. Okay. So that is shared reading. Those are the 6 ways that you can diversify your experience with your kids. Again, if you are someone that needs more coaching in this area, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to help you create this imagination in real life in your class. All right. And I also give different reads that I like to recommend educators across the country to engage in. I'm a big fan of Eric Jensen, and these are different texts that I love to share with others to continue to engage in this practice of teacher inquiry, becoming that reflective educator so you can develop in your practice. And as always, you all, we got homework to do. We're going to set the goal and we are going to make it happen. Thank you all so much for your time. I hope this video was helpful to you. If so, give it a thumbs up, share it amongst your colleagues, and I look forward to connecting with you all in the next one. Peace.